Come on, dude.
Kicking off, I'm mostly caught up with the anime. I've kind of got like vague ideas of what's happening between where the anime is and where the ending is. But since we shifted gears to this, I have read the final chapter, so I might be behind on maybe some specifics of what's happened in probably the last 100 chapters or so. I don't really know how far behind it is, but it seems like I have a feeling I will mostly be able to keep up with at least the stuff that has happened in this kind of epilogue chapter.
Yeah, so I appreciate you willing to jump in headfirst into the spoiler pit for that, and we are going to just have a good time talking about the final chapter because we just all have thoughts on it, and that's why we're kind of just jumping straight into this. Tyler, you're the one who wanted to talk about this most. What was your overall opinion of the ending of My Hero?
Nothing fucking changed.
I know.
He didn't.
And the world remained.
I got to be a hero for all of... How long is a semester of school?
I think it was a full year of school that they were doing.
Okay.
Well,
I guess he got to do a full year of school as a hero and then went on through the rest of that high school 4 years. Not
Well, even then, it was
that.
like just a provisional hero license, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he wasn't a professional hero. He was just doing it as like as a student. But like the last couple pages made it seem like he gets to be a hero again, right? Like, am I understanding that right? That him talking with All Might at the end was him going, by the way, they built a suit that's gonna let you keep being me, basically.
Basically, which I'm kind of sad he didn't just try to do that in the first place, where it was like, okay, I don't have powers anymore. I guess I'm just gonna give up on being a hero instead of trying to rely on tools or anything. Since like that tech already existed there for All Might. Why couldn't he have just done something?
All Might used that, yeah. Like I do know that that's part of the fight. That All Might
it's just
gets like
a better version
cool
of that.
suit.
Well, there's no AFO right now, so why is that needed?
Yeah, and this was built to stop like the universe's biggest threat, who has been neutralized now.
It's a case of just let's just kind of go from topic to topic because do we want to start with just the overall nothing changed argument?
Yeah, sure.
No, the one thing I want to talk about that changed is I think that Uraraka got like a little chubbier, and I'm all here for it. I love it. Please,
Okay. That's the good
let me have
change.
another full
Filled out
body
a
shot of
little
her.
bit.
God, it's so hot.
Yeah, yeah. The very last page. Yeah.
Wow, she did it.
She finally did it. We got a chubbier Uraraka.
Filled out a little, I guess.
That is the single greatest change to the very end of My Hero
Real
Academia.
talk, this panel's been going around for like half the characters. I'm like, did they even change at all? Like,
Yep.
I think Tyler, you went like, I like Bakugo's redesign, and I'm staring at him right now. And like only a couple seconds ago did I notice like his little ponytails things.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only thing I'm really talking about.
I didn't notice that either.
He has fun fuses for hair, which I do think is it's a nice touch. I like that.
So that's the designs that have not changed, but also the world hasn't really changed. I've had plenty of thoughts about like, oh, how's it? The world's got to change from this, right? Because there's all this talk of quirk singularity. There's all this talk of just how like this society filled with superpowered people is just so unstable. And there's all this stuff about how it's just like, it doesn't make sense for it all to just be the same at the end. And then it is.
I mean, on the one hand, I do think it's like, I appreciate it's not like a big fight happened and it essentially ended like a thing. Like it ended a systemic problem. Like I appreciate that at least that wasn't the resolution. But it also does feel very much like they're just going like, yeah, there's this big problem where like quirks are kind of increasingly growing in power, and it's just going to be more and more common folk having weapons of mass destruction at their fingertips. Maybe we should think about as a society how we're going to address that. And it kind of never comes up from what I can tell. It's just sort of like well, maybe it'll happen someday, but as long as we're all nicer to each other, maybe it'll be okay. Which, I don't know, maybe this is the pessimist in me. That's not a message that really fills me with hope. It's not exactly we did anything about it. It's just, hopefully it solves itself, I guess.
The main takeaway of this is supposed to be that for the final fight and for the final like few chapters leading up to this, the focus has generally been on what made Shigaraki the way he was and how can we prevent that for the future. And that is a very poignant message, especially because it's very... that's a very real life debate. Like there's just so many people who don't want to deal with thinking of these, murderers and people as people. and they don't want to get into like why they do what they do. They're killers. Let's just get rid of them and not think about them anymore, because otherwise we're encouraging that. And so that was the point of topic for these past few chapters. It's just like, well, should we just ignore what they were because they killed people and we shouldn't give them any validation? Or should we understand what is sort of hurt they're coming from and try to stop that? And so my hero's clearly taking the latter option. And there was a character, Grant, you probably didn't see it since you only read the last chapter. There was a character who was absolutely coded to be the next Shigaraki. And then after the time skip, one of the first things we see, the kid had his mouth sewn shut by his abusive parents. And so it's very clear that this grown-up kid here with the little scars around his mouth is that same guy. So
see, me and Ben are arguing about this. I'm saying it's some guy with stubble.
Yeah, just very.
This is just some
weird stubble.
14-year-old with his 6 o'clock shadow.
Yeah,
but because some old lady reached out to him just before he was about to attack innocent people, and helped him when he was needing it, he became a good guy. So that's clearly the point that they were trying to make there. So the idea of the ending
the fold, basically,
is generally supposed to be like, okay, well, we're developing a system to help these people out before they become what they become.
Not even really that. It was just that Deku inspired people to reach out.
That's the thing. It's like he inspired someone to. That's not really a systemic change.
Like, the only system change that was even mentioned really was that All Might wanted to get rid of the hero ranking system, and then 8 years later, there's no talk about that. It
does seem to still be a ranking, yeah.
Your friend is dropping in the polls.
Bakugo's dropping in the charts. Shoto seems to be the clear winner of that race.
I don't know. Like, as far as that goes, it does feel just kind of underwhelming. It's like Deku's inspiring people, and it's like, oh, they're doing grassroots movements. The thing is, none of that's necessarily tied to what this whole last conflict was about. As someone who comes from One Piece, where every final fight solves like every final punch even solves like 4 things at once, it was interesting just how disconnected this seemed to be. It's just like, we fight the bad guy, we won, we saved the day, and now later on we're going to do something else to help other places. It feels disconnected, and because it's all just like through narration, it feels like nothing's really happening. And so if there is a change, we're just not really seeing it and experiencing it, is my concern.
I guess ultimately it's just not the story the author wanted to tell, but it just feels like a very like, and this should help with this big brewing problem. Like, it doesn't really feel like a solid solution as much as like it's the beginnings of maybe what could turn into what will help, which, I guess, it's just like this is like the starting line for that kind of thing. But yeah, it does feel very inconclusive, I guess.
Yeah.
Someone's saying in the chat that I think they're talking about like Tail Guy or whatever being cooler or having stuff in another manga. I'm not gonna read another manga to learn about to like a character. I'm going to read a spinoff because I like a character. Man, every character has a spinoff, and I think they're all great just because they're all those characters are great.
Yeah, I don't want to read spin-off material. I don't particularly like that. I really dislike the things like Boruto happening and what's eventually going to happen with this manga. It's absolutely going to.
Oh yeah.
My Hero
the
agency. Yeah.
Do you think it is going to be written by Horikoshi? How involved do you think Horikoshi is going to be?
I think it's the same kind of involvement as all the other mangaka whose series have outlived them, where it's like they are given a producer title and are told, hey, do you
maybe
like this thing that we're doing?
Role.
And then they say yes, and then everyone just does what they're going to do to make money.
If an issue is that like this finale didn't really touch on like other big conflicts that were kind of left hanging, do you think that the main conflict of like the Deku versus Shigaraki / All for One fight, do you feel like that kind of wrapped up well? Do you think that was handled okay?
I think in general it was.
How do you feel kind of like this last chunk of the arc, I guess? How do you feel?
I did not care for a lot of the war arc almost at all, but I kept checking in for the artwork because, man, it's good. But, man, I will say the Bakugo AFO fight near the very end was fucking awesome, and I loved it.
Yeah, and I think reading it week to week, obviously huge pain, and definitely is a detriment to the experience of a story. reading through it like as a binge is always going to be the preferred method. And as a longtime One Piece fan, people will get tired of arcs just because they're running long and going week to week, and that drains any tension. But having experienced that and like checked myself for it, I'll say the ending is fine. It was a little dragged out, but not to the extent that it feels like reading it week to week. I think Shigaraki's ending is perfectly fine and kind of expected. And as far as character work goes, it was all very well done. Like, he kind of got redemption in his own way.
Yeah, I did see there was like a little phantom Shigaraki looking on as Deku and his friends were lining up at the very end. Just trying to see if there's like maybe just like some good connective themes here that make this ending make more sense, I guess, in that way, so it doesn't feel as like, you know, it kind of just left stuff hanging. I
think it ended fine as far as Shigaraki goes. It's just like, it was only Shigaraki that got resolved with that fight. And that was like over 100 chapters of fighting just for that, it feels like. Yeah. Not to accomplish anything else.
Getting one guy to see the light is a big fight. You know, it's going to take a lot of work. And that's why we've all got to pitch in. That's why we've all got to become the next great hero.
My only thing really is that like the whole last fight, after Shigaraki, I was also just like, okay, the next form, right? That was not his last form. We're gonna go through a whole nother thing. We gotta get the crew assembled, and I was just like, I'm tired. Let's end this, please.
Yeah, that's the week to week reading experience. I think is that just I'm tired of this kind of thing. Do you want to move on to that about my hero's beginning statement of the story of how I became the greatest hero and how it may or may not have been resolved by this final chapter?
I do feel like this was at least like heavily hinted at earlier, because I think it's when Deku goes back to UA and Uraraka basically has her big speech on how like who's going to help the heroes and like we all need to kind of pitch in and do stuff. Like, I do think I think there was some narration there where I think Deku even says, this is how we all stepped towards being the greatest hero or something.
Yes.
So, like, kind of ever since then, I sort of figured that that's where this was going, was that it was going to be less about him being on top of the world and more about being a hero, is about being a good person in your daily life, which, like, you know, is a positive message. I like that idea. But, yeah, definitely does really undercut the, at least, you know, big feeling intro of like, oh, we're gonna see this guy rise up and become the greatest. Not quite.
Yeah,
he peaked in high school.
But that's kind of the issue. It's just that it sets an expectation for rising up and being great. And the thing is, I don't think those two outcomes are mutually exclusive is the problem. And that's what I definitely was expecting to be like, oh, the greatest hero is someone who can inspire people to be heroes themselves. But that can also still mean being like the top of other heroes. It's like,
like, you can still be the best of heroes, even though everyone's now the greatest hero they can be.
Yeah, because I kind of thought like All Might as a symbol encouraged other people to not doing anything. So I figured Deku would be the All Might plus encouraging everyone to do things.
He'd show up yelling, I am here, and then look at the camera, and so are you. You'd better pitch in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what I thought it was going to be. And instead, he
becomes a smoky
He took a step back from that, and then just said, oh, well, everyone else is going to do it instead of me because I don't have any powers anymore.
Only you can prevent villains. Or only you can prevent yourself from becoming a villain, I guess.
You don't have powers, you really are useless. Let me step aside.
I just thought it was going to be more than that. And the idea of it just being, oh, the greatest hero is the one who reaches out their hand is what the conclusion turned out to be. But Deku already did that in chapter 1.
Yeah, see, and that's what he was saying. That was the story of how he became the greatest hero. He reached out his hand that time.
It was retroactively only talking about chapter 1.
Yeah, he was talking. Yeah, that narration was for the first chapter. Even though we definitely have flashbacks of him reaching his hand out to Bakugo even earlier as kids.
Yeah,
and making Bakugo practically into an almost villain in that instant. So you're telling me that this is a good thing?
Yeah,
trying to help is only ever good, Grant.
That's what they said. The road to heaven, only good intentions.
I expected this also this full circle moment 100%. The one where he encourages a kid with, in this case, crappy powers. I thought it would be someone with no powers, but it's fine. And he encourages him to say, "Hey, you can be a hero too," because that's what he always wanted to hear himself when he didn't have powers. And I was like, okay, I knew that would happen, and I expected it. It's good storytelling. That's how it should be. It's not very impactful because, for one thing, it's just a kid falling over.
Yeah, you weren't really saving anyone from any kind of real hardship here. It's just kind of a kid trip.
And I mean, it's meant to call back to when Deku saved Bakugo from the Slime Man, which was a lot more intense. So it's just like, it invites comparison, and this feels very lame by comparison.
Yeah.
I will say, I put money down at the beginning of the series, would have bet the whole farm and been like, All Might will not be alive by the last chapter of this story. There is no way All Might's making it through this alive. Lo and behold, he's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets to keep kicking. He managed to beat the whole your mentor has to die for you to go on your hero's journey thing.
That's also another thing, though, is I feel like All Might's kind of a detriment to this because it's, again, adding to the feeling of nothing changes. The series starts with All Might gifting Deku some powers, and it ends with All Might gifting Deku some powers. Wow, isn't that
full circle? It's
Deku
not that
really
it's no
learned a
different.
lesson here.
It just it rhymes, as you see. It's cyclical.
And I was saying once to one of my friends, it was just like the full circle moments, I feel, are a narrative device to show how things have changed. And it feels like not much has changed with these full circle moments, so it just feels like we're spinning our wheels.
I would have rathered a Naruto ending where we got to see all their kids.
Just jump forward. I want to see negative gravity plus one for all.
Yeah, just so we can just theorize off what their dumb powers are. That's it.
Yeah, and then once floaty All Might zooms by, he goes, "Come on, explosive frog," and everyone gets real upset that that's who ended up together. And then it's just
anything I put my saliva on explodes.
We gotta hang out with Soundjack Grape, and everyone goes, "What? They hooked up?" and just immediately burns their final volume.
I was thinking about it, comparing this to Naruto, and it's like Naruto kind of has a very similar ending.
I feel like Naruto's ending is way more satisfying, though.
Yeah, Naruto's...
like, at least he becomes fucking Hokage.
Yeah, Naruto's Hokage at the end. That's the main difference in that.
Yeah,
helps.
but like,
and there is change. All the villages are united, and there's no war going on.
Deku's a teacher at like the most prestigious hero academy as a dude seemingly with no powers. Like, that's, it's not Hokage, sure. He's not president of heroes. But he's pretty high up, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, like, Naruto still has, like, some issues present, so it's, like, still military.
Are we abolishing the military, the whole ninjas? Is that what we're trying to do?
I think the fact that all the military is made up of children is a problem. I think that's a societal
Was that ever established
issue.
in Naruto? That's your issue, Ben. Fuck you.
Yeah, the universe of Naruto glorifies child
Here, I'm giving you a gun.
That's what ninjas are. They're children in the military.
I mean, but that's also essentially what hero students are. It's basically just enlisting them to put their lives on the line. Like, I guess in your mind, where would the ending have gone instead? I guess.
Okay, here's a thought I had.
Yeah. We don't need to go into
this. Is a more specific detail.
Here's how it would go. But
y'all remember chapter 1? Where Deku is told by a doctor man that he doesn't have a quirk.
That your pinky's all weird.
Yeah, your pinky toe is weird.
I know. Yeah.
So Deku's told by this doctor man, "Oh, you don't have a quirk," and it's just like, okay, he doesn't have a quirk. That makes sense. And then you realize, oh wait, this doctor man,
this doctor here.
Looking back, he looks kind of like the evil doctor man who worked for the Quirk Stealer. That's something, huh? And I always thought that would seem like a very clear Chekhov's gun.
Look, he can't just be a pediatric doctor during the day.
Yeah, man, this dude's got to fund his supervillainy somehow.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I wouldn't want him to cram that into the last few chapters as like, oh, it turns out you do have a power, and then he uses his own. But I would have liked him to be like, okay, Deku learns after the doctor's defeated, like, oh, his quirk was stolen, but now there's no way to get it back because Dr. Man was defeated. and Deku has to be like okay with not getting his own original quirk back or something like that.
You don't get to know what really made you special back in the day.
And
Deku,
make
in
that like
fight,
a character
you
moment.
kicked him really hard and aligned your toe. You activated your quirk.
From the start of the series, my thought was like, okay, the theming of this is that quirks don't matter to being a hero, being heroic matters, you know, doing the right thing and all that. And so I thought, okay, if Deku loses his quirk, what if he did that like at the beginning or just before the final fight, and then he still has to be a hero in spite of that? And that inspires people without quirks to be the true heroes and all that. And that didn't happen either. He loses his quirk, but at the very, very end, and then to kind of spit in the face of that potential character
even
growth,
that message,
he has to go work as a lame job as a teacher, which
a lame job.
Granted, yeah,
thank you all.
He's a teacher.
Yeah,
at
we
UA,
love
it's
educators.
fine. No, he's a teacher at UA and all, but he's only seen writing at a desk. It wasn't showing him being an inspiring teacher, was it? It was showing him talking to another teacher about how lame his life is.
He wasn't talking about how lame his life is. Deku was loving it. Deku was going like, man, I'm so happy. I love seeing my friends and them having success. Sure, I miss it sometimes, but
it feels so melancholy. Yeah, it's like, oh man, I wish I had powers. I don't see my friends anymore. I'll settle for being
a teacher.
They just don't give
a fuck since I can't jump around really high and whip around.
The bottom corner there, a thought occurred to me. I might be quirkless again, but as long as I made use of my experience to encourage others, there's something awesome about that. Reminds me so much of the infinitely memed on webcomic of the guy who's like, my bike was stolen and I was sad, but then it made me think the guy who stole my bike is probably happier than I am sad now. So that's good. Is basically these panels right here.
Yeah, it just feels like coping. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely this is what I tell myself. This is how I make myself feel okay about this.
And given the fact that it ends with Deku getting a power set again from All Might as a final twist, it's like, okay, yeah, he wasn't happy not being a hero without powers. That was the takeaway I had from it. I know I'm getting some disagreement in the chat, it seems.
It's just this thing where it does feel like this message does feel very muddled. Like I hadn't thought about it with like because this did kind of feel like it can't make up its mind, because it's like can you be a hero without powers? Yes, because being a hero just means reaching out and doing the right thing. But I'm going to be a hero in my own way and being a teacher and teaching people to do that. And then All Might, the classic symbol that we all used as a crutch, shows up and literally goes, or you could just really be a hero because your friends pooled their resources and made this for you. And like, it's like, it's a happy story maybe for him, but it really does kind of stomp on the message of like, yeah, you could be a hero in your own way, being a good teacher and all that. That's nice and true. Or you could, be a real hero and take the suitcase. You earned it. Which I actually really kind of hate that. Like, I understand the intent here, but All Might going, you've earned this power fair and square, kind of adds to the not everybody gets to be a hero. like it's like implying that he earned this means that there were ways to not earn the right to be a hero.
Yeah.
And we're also saying that everyone can be a hero by reaching their hand out.
Yeah.
I feel like you had two solid stick to your guns endings like potential here, where like, I mean, which, the ending of I got the best quirk and I'm the best hero, because that's what being a hero is, having the best quirk and the most power. Like, yeah, obviously that's not a great message to end your story on, but like, it feels like they couldn't commit to it doesn't take superpowers to be a hero. Because like, yes, he doesn't have natural superpowers, but we're giving him technology to give him essentially superpowers. So it really feels like it doesn't stick to any principle at the end.
There's a lot of complexity to this, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it's just like, man, I don't know what the correct situation for this is. To give some credit to the ending, because I am not just wanting to shit on it. It's part of the thing is like with the quirk singularity being a thing, it's like, okay, any potential villain could have more and more destructive powers. So the ideal solution is to stop it at the source, is to make sure that people aren't so marginalized that they have to lash out and kill people with their nuclear quirks. So I think that's kind of the idea that they're wanting to structure here, is just like, this is going to keep getting worse unless we do actual like real helping people. So I think that does make sense. I think overall it still is a very solid series. I think the ending could have gone a lot of different ways to make it better, and even more generic ways, and I think it would have been still more satisfying. So that's my take on it personally. I'm very big themes person, and it feels like the themes weren't followed up on in their totality.
I feel like I can pick up that vibe. That's sort of how I feel from what I've gleaned. I feel like Horikoshi kind of painted himself into a corner. Was just sort of like, well, I really want to get this message across of anybody can be a hero, does not take superpowers.
I give it a not.
Would you say that for the whole series or just for the finale?
I'd say it's worth reading just for that one kid I mentioned whose mouth was sewn together.
304 chapters, or 430 chapters, Ben.
No,
you have fun the whole thing. Do you
it.
think you'd binge the whole thing?
I would. I think it's still worth it. I think just because the ending left on a sour note, I think that's one bad chapter. That's honestly how I see it.
One bad chapter? Did you have fun the last 30?
Listen, I said already that I think reading it through as a binge and not week to week will make it so much easier. And you know, some of these chapters were like 8 pages long. Like, there was so little that you could get week to week that it drained all tension and interest. I think you could probably binge the whole final fight in an hour and have fun with it. So I'm giving it a ready.
Official ready and an official not.
I'm gonna stick by my not. I think you go read Gachi Akata instead.
Ooh,
it's 105 chapters right now. So much good. A lot better.
I think I would also still give this a ready. I'm, the contentious last arc is the thing I haven't really read yet. So, maybe take my perspective with a grain of salt. But I do really like a lot of these characters and the powers and stuff, and like the just design and kind of this general world I think is cool. It does feel like it sets up some really interesting conflicts that don't get followed up on, and I do think that's very unfortunate. But I think on the whole, I think it's a very fun story with some really cool action set pieces and some fun dramatic character stuff.
I like it. I don't like the last chapter, but I like this.
But the last chapter kind of sucks.
It sure is a penny at the end of a cake.
Good times. Zone.